The silence of Manhattan doesn't just fall, it claims the city, turning the neon lights of Times Square into blurred smears of pink and electric blue against the asphalt. Sarah stood on the corner of Fifth Avenue, her coat collar turned up against a wind that felt personal, like a cold hand pressing against her chest. For 7 years, this city had been her sanctuary, the backdrop to a love story she thought was written in stone. Mark was her rock, a brilliant, sharp-witted hedge fund manager who carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who owned the world. They had met at a gallery opening in Soho, a night filled with expensive champagne and the kind of laughter that made the rest of the room disappear. He had told her then that she was the only masterpiece he ever wanted to study, and for a long time she believed him. Their apartment in the Upper West Side was a testament to that belief, filled with shared books, vintage records, and the lingering scent of espresso and expensive mahogany. But lately, the air in their home had grown thin, as if the oxygen was being sucked out by things left unsaid. Mark started coming home late, his explanations peppered with corporate jargon, mergers, late-night filings, emergency board meetings. He began leaving his phone face down on the granite kitchen island, a small gesture that felt like a fortress wall. Sarah, being a woman of grace and deep-rooted trust, didn't pry. She told herself that New York was a hungry city, and Mark was simply feeding its appetite for success. She ignored the way he smelled of a perfume that wasn't hers, a heavy, floral scent that clung to his wool coats like a ghost. She ignored the way his eyes would dart away when she mentioned their upcoming anniversary trip to Santorini. The first real crack appeared on a Tuesday, a day so ordinary it felt safe. Mark had called to say he was flying to Chicago for a 48-hour summit. Sarah had kissed him goodbye, straightened his tie, and watched him vanish into a black Uber, never imagining the man she loved was driving toward a different life entirely. Later that evening, a sudden craving for the specific dark chocolate truffles from a boutique in Chelsea drove her out into the rain. As she walked past a small, candlelit French bistro tucked away from the main thoroughfare, she saw a silhouette through the steamed-up window that stopped her heart. It was Mark. He wasn't in Chicago. He was sitting at a corner table, his jacket off, his sleeves rolled up in that casual way he only did when he was truly relaxed. Opposite him sat a woman, younger, with sharp features and blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Sarah watched, paralyzed, as Mark reached across the table. He didn't just touch her hand, he intertwined his fingers with hers, leaning in to whisper something that made the woman throw her head back in a silent, intimate laugh. It was a look of pure, unadulterated adoration, the same look he had given Sarah at that gallery 7 years ago. The betrayal wasn't just the lie about Chicago, it was the theft of their private language, the recycling of his soul for someone new. Sarah didn't scream. She didn't storm inside and throw wine in his face. Instead, she felt a strange, cold clarity wash over her, sharper than the New York wind. She realized that the man in the bistro was a stranger wearing her husband's skin. She walked back to their apartment in a trance, the rain soaking through her layers until she was cold to the bone. She didn't turn on the lights. She sat in the dark, watching the headlights of taxis dance across the ceiling, waiting for the ghost of their marriage to return. When Mark finally walked through the door 2 days later, spinning a tale about the wind in the windy city and the boredom of corporate hotels, Sarah let him finish. She let him hang up his coat, the one that smelled of the bistro's wine and the blonde woman's floral perfume. Then she placed the bistro's receipt, which she had gone back to find in the trash outside the restaurant, on the table. The silence that followed was louder than any argument they had ever had. Mark's face went through a terrifying transformation, from confusion to realization to a pathetic kind of desperation. He dropped to his knees, weaving a web of excuses about stress, about feeling invisible, about a momentary lapse in judgment that had actually lasted months. He cried, his expensive suit wrinkling as he clung to her hem, promising to delete numbers, to go to therapy, to rebuild the ruins. But Sarah looked down at him and realized that you cannot rebuild a house on quicksand. Trust is like a mirror. Once shattered, you can glue the pieces back together, but the cracks will always distort the reflection. You will always see the break. She realized that by staying, she would be agreeing to live in a house of shadows, forever looking for clues, forever smelling his clothes, forever wondering if every late night was another bistro, another blonde, another lie. She packed a single suitcase. She didn't want the art, the furniture, or the jewelry bought with blood money from a heart he was breaking. As she stood at the door, the keys heavy in her hand, Mark begged her for one last chance. "It was just a mistake," he choked out. Sarah looked at him, her eyes as dry and hard as diamonds. "A mistake is taking the wrong exit on the highway, Mark. A choice is lying to my face for months while you held her hand. I'm not leaving because you cheated. I'm leaving because I finally realized I deserve to be with someone who doesn't have to choose between me and his own ego." She stepped out into the hallway, the click of the door behind her sounding like a gavel. The New York rain was still falling, but as she stepped into a yellow cab, she felt the first spark of warmth she had known in years. She wasn't just leaving a man, she was coming back to herself.